Welcome to episode 78 of the Critical Fools podcast. This week we'll be discussing and reviewing a classic 90s film, 1992, birth years, or my birth year. You're 91, right?
I missed it by a few days.
That's okay. You're still part of our class.
No, my birth year, Vanilla Ice dropped Ice Ice Baby.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
The film is titled Glengarry Glen Ross. It stars, actually, it's a pretty star-studded cast. Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin, Ed Harris, Kevin Spacey, some other ones I don't recognize as much, like Alan Arkin and Jonathan Pryce. Directed by James Foley. It's I guess high level. I think it's actually based on a play as well.
Mm-hmm.
But high level, basically, it's capturing 2 days in the lives of real estate salesmen who, let's be honest, they're struggling. We don't have the context of how long, or they're like, we just know they're struggling. And each of the characters, has their own, backstory and their own dynamic and their own way of, I guess, processing this tense moment. And I think it's also, why the play was probably popular, and probably why it became a movie is that because I did some additional reading, is that like the big stock market crash in '89 occurred just 3 years prior. And I think this play / movie resonated with a lot of Americans who I think felt, they had, done the right thing. They worked hard, or they're professional. I wouldn't say they worked hard. They were professional. They tried their best. And here they were in an environment where maybe there wasn't a really much chance to succeed. And they also felt like very threatened of, their basically their style of living and their lifestyles. And it's also, I think, in my opinion, it's also a movie / play about the tension between what I call the man in the arena, which is somebody who is doing the work, like low level, and management and execs. And obviously it's interesting because these are trends that still happen to this day. But yeah, just wanted to get your initial. I mean, what did you think of the film? I know we've had similar style films where like they're more play style, like it's just there's only like three, the setting's very fixed, like to certain locations, and the cast is pretty much the same people. Like there's not much like new random characters. So I'm curious, like, what you think of the style, movie, because you can see how this could easily have been a play, right? When I just said like it's a play, like what did you think of the play, or what did you think of the movie what did you think of the movie being depicted as a film, but probably its intent was to be a actual an opera, Broadway play. And yeah, I'll start there.
Yes, for context, and I didn't realize this until like after watching the movie, was that it is based on a 1984 play. So the same name and concept, and then it was adapted to this movie in '92. It was interesting. I didn't really think about the context of the '89 stock market crash, like relative to this movie. So that was some interesting insight to consider that I didn't really think of. But yeah, I do. Some of the acting performances were absolutely brilliant. I loved Al Pacino in this film, like star. Like I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is like the Pacino in his prime. In many ways. So I really enjoyed that. I do think that it felt a little choppy at times, and I think that, like, going from scene to scene, I think that might have been because it was a play. So, like, I kind of revisited when I was watching that. I didn't enjoy that aspect as much, but now it makes sense, like, in, I guess, retrospect, knowing now that it was a play. It was pretty good. It's just it's interesting seeing, like, 90s films, especially at this point in like some 30 years later, because it's just the style and pacing of films has just changed so much. So it is interesting to see some films in this era sometimes. I know we talked about Do the Right Thing before that, speaking of another New York film, and it has a different style as well. But I think I enjoyed that one a little more than this one.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think Do the Right Thing had a lot more things to talk about. I think this one's really specific to a certain class in America. I would say the white collar workforce. But this movie has one of my favorite scenes of all time.
That being said, I think also some of my disdain for the movies, I just get annoyed with a lot of sales people and their cliches.
Okay. Okay, that's bias.
I'll always be selling ABS. I'm like, okay.
Hey,
that's like Grant Cardone's 10X slogan. I'm like, dear God, these people and their slogans.
That's how they are. It's funny that's how they are too. That's
I know that's how they are. We know a lot of salespeople, and that's why it gets annoying. And I think I got a little triggered at times in this film because of that.
My favorite scene is the Alec Baldwin though. On my whole movie, that's like I'm gonna rate the movie like it's something else, and that scene is like 10 out of 10.
I don't know. The scene where Pacino rips into Spacey might have been my favorite.
That's a good one too, actually. But I like especially when when he brings out the
watch,
the nuts. I was like, this is so good, dude. And then he's just like, what did I make this year? What did you make, you lowly? It's just like, this is too much, dude. This is exactly that 90s corporate America, dude. Now they think this way, but they don't say that anymore because they know they get in trouble. Yeah, always ABC or yeah, the always
ABS.
ABS always be selling. And that was funny.
Yeah, they had so many. It was like, what is it? Captures, yada yada, execute. It was like their slogan. It was like care, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
it wasn't, but it was some cliche like that where I'm like, oh gosh. I was like, yep, I know that sales kind of corporate mentality.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, is there anything specific? This is a pretty straightforward film in that, there's a lot of pressure for there's like 4 salesmen. 4? Yeah. And they're feeling pressure to by Alec Baldwin's character, who comes from kind of a downtown corporate office, to really hit their marks and target because they're underselling. And the only one who's really good is Al Pacino's character, and I forgot his name.
Roma, right?
Yeah, Roma. That's right. So Roma's good. The other 3 are just nervous and they're not doing so well. And so they kind of, you see, and it was interesting that there's kind of the old man, and I forgot his name. Do you remember off the top of your head?
It's not Moss. Moss is the guy that wants to steal the stuff.
No,
I think it's Sheldon. Shelley, yeah.
Yeah. So you have Shelley's character who feels the pressure. He's kind of the oldest of all of them, and he's just really not selling. He is like Hades behind him. Spacey even tells me like, dude, you haven't had a good month in like 2 years. And like you're feeling the pressure because it's funny. All these guys love to relive their glory days. Back when I was in your shoes and your age, I was selling left and right, and all of these nostalgic moments. But he's like, you haven't done anything for me lately. He's like, you're not hitting your numbers. He's like, you need to get out there. And they all, and then there's the other 2. I forgot whose idea it was to try to rob the place.
I think it's Moss's idea to rob the place.
Mod, yeah.
Or Mod, yeah. Or Dave Moss, right? Yeah. Moss. And then George was the other guy he roped in, but George is the one that's like the shy guy in the group.
Yeah. So for other context, it's known that they're all given leads to try to sell, but they're really crappy leads. And he's like, the downtown office has the good leads, the Glengarry leads, right? And so basically they're all like, we need these leads. It's like, you don't get them. The only way you get them is if you sell with the crummy leads. He's like, because we're not going to give them to someone who can't close. And so then they're all feeling stressed, and they all basically want to try to steal the. Moss's idea is to steal the leads and then sell them to a competitor. And wouldn't you know it, the next day there is and so he tells George about this plan. And so you're meant to believe that George the whole time is the one who the next day steals the leads. But it turns out in a good twist by Spacey's character that it was actually Shelley who was convinced by Moss to steal leads, and he actually did. And that's kind of the gist of the overall movie. It's that big twist is reviewed, and how you're meant to think that Spacey just had a stupid moment, but he really tricked him to try to like tease out who actually was the person who actually stole the leads and was the actual criminal. because that's a big chunk of the movie.
It is, yeah, exactly. And I think, but he also screws Roma by doing it. But taking a step back,
that was a such a good scene. But anyway, go ahead.
But no, that's I would say like this. The plot's pretty like it's really surrounds itself around, like I said, the setting of the character, and then it's the stealing of the leads, and then like the resolution of that. But like how all the characters, I think, I guess one way to analyze this movie other than themes is like, which characters did you find like kind of annoying? Which characters are like, I kind of see their point of view. Because I think you could watch this movie from different like angles. Because I could see somebody who like maybe identifies with like Kevin Spacey or Alec Baldwin being like, yeah, these guys are just, this is what I have to deal with. This is the workforce of America, I mean, seriously, you could watch this movie or read this play from different angles, right? Or you can identify with Roma, who is like probably a good performer, but like he's busting his chops, and basically if he declines, he'll be discarded, like the Shelley guy. And like the Shelley guy even asks him like in the end, right? Like, why are you doing this to me? Because remember, like what I mean by conscious, I like, remember that in the beginning, he realizes he's in a desperate spot. And, he does some shady stuff because he tries to bribe Kevin Spacey's character to give him the better leads, trying to use this, my daughter's in the hospital stuff. And then when he does mythically close a deal with this couple, he's very in the moon, bragging about it. But in reality, it was just one of those. I mean, we know these kind of people. I've seen them where like they just want to be kind of like, placated to and like feel good. And then, they were never going to close the deal. And he asks him like, why did you do this to me? And he just goes, I didn't like you. And what I've learned now is I've become slowly more of a leadership role is that in the end, that matters way more than people realize. Like if you're in the dog, if you're in the doghouse, if you're not performing at a high level, they're going to try to find a way to cut you. But if you're in the non-doghouse and you're in the in group and your performance is like,
pretty good,
you could be decent, like enough to not like pose questions, you're going to be around a long time. And so like that, when I saw that line, it just reminded me to like, in the end, like, no matter if you try to say metrics and say this BS, it's just that simple line. I don't like you. Or I like you. And if I don't like you, sorry, man, I'm making it hard for you. And you might want to, you're either going to be fired or you're going to leave on your own. And that's what happened to Shelley. And then in the end, his boss told him, I don't like you. That's why I'm doing this to you. He didn't even say like, oh, I'm doing this because like you're shady. He said nothing like that, right? You could have easily said like, that's why I think it's intentional with, especially with like films and plays that are like, based off like some literature. He could have easily said like, because you're a criminal, why are you bribing me? Your character's in question. No, he just said, I don't like you. He just didn't like how he went about himself, and he's going to jail now. So, he got screwed. So I didn't like the Shelley character. I was just like, okay, I didn't like Kevin Spacey's character, but when he said, I don't like you, I was like, yeah, me too. Good riddance. I felt bad for some of the other ones. I actually saw Moss's point about like, management is dictating all the terms. We should take some power in our own hands and go on our own.
The commie.
The commie. But at the same time, I was like, go on your own, and then like you just sell it and you bolt. Like, is that not even like doing that, right? So yeah, I mean, look, I think this movie.
What did you think of Roma?
I thought Roma was a typical guy that like he knows the BS of management, but wants to make good money. He's like he's actually probably what most managers want in their employees, right? Highly proficient. Yeah, he's got some ego, but you need some ego to be highly proficient. Probably does what the company needs. Yeah, he rubs a bit of elbows, but like because what he value brings in, that's fine.
But he's too good. Yeah,
exactly. But as soon as he's not good, he's like I just said, he's the first one that's like you're out. So
I really liked Roma's character the most.
But yeah, he also, I mean, Al Pacino's acting was like in the 90s. I realized that he was really good because another movie I have on the deeper my queue is Heat, and he's amazing in that film. Dude.
Yeah.
It's like so good.
A famous movie.
Yeah. Oh man, I love Heat, dude. Everybody says it doesn't age well. I'm like, that's because you haven't been to LA. Like that's how LA would sound. It's actually heat is actually if I had to describe LA,
Yeah, Aries has said that before. That's his Aries Spears said that was his favorite film.
Yeah, it's an amazing film. I think the people who don't like it is because people have gotten too used to like the modern special effects. Because yeah, it doesn't hold up to like the modern like action flick. But like, I think the reason I like it still is because like I think if that let's say hypothetically were to happen in LA, it would sound and feel that way. It wouldn't be like because the problem with films now is that let's be honest, some of these heist films are not realistic at all.
It is interesting when you feel or you're like there's a certain aesthetic that certain films or just art show that it's like if you've been at a certain place, you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly like they captured that feeling. Yeah. Where you were saying like heat really does it. I would say like because I had some family in Long Beach. Aspects of the Vince Staples show made me feel like that. I don't know if it was his color choice. I'm like, yeah, he did Long Beach right, and it's just interesting how like you directing your choice like really matters for that.
Yeah, the next film I have picked, I think captures 1990s New York pretty well. So
which film is that?
We'll still see at the.
I have another film I'm thinking of. So what film is it, Chris?
It's Kids, 1995.
Oh, Kids, yeah, that's right.
Good luck with that one, dude. NC-17, let's go.
I'm not watching.
Yeah, you are, dude. It's good, dude. It's not that bad, dude. It's effed up, but it's not that bad, dude. You'll
this guy.
Knowing you're gonna be like, dude, that was a tough watch, dude.
Yeah. Is it a tough watch as Old Boy?
No. Old Boy was more effed up, but you gotta remember that we're deviating, but the quick synopsis on Kids is that it's the director and writer, they wanted to capture basically lower income New York kids.
Yeah.
And this is also in the backdrop of like before the boom of like the 2000s, all the redevelopment, right? So the 80s are ending, right? The dark era, and then they're just turning the corner in the 90s before like, they get what I would say the modern day New York. But these are kids who just they don't have a chance because like lack of education, no parental oversight. I mean, you'll see it when you watch the film. But
does it take place in like what borough does it take place in?
I mean, actually, it takes place in East Village before it becomes the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is East Village when it was like
bad.
real, not like now where it's like it's gritty because it's dirty, but like it's filled with like basically people who can pay expensive rents. But yeah, it's a different East Village. But yeah, it takes place in East Village. Even like the park that they hang out in many times. I've been to that park many times. So, but yeah, and actually like a lot of the even the casting, a lot of future great actors, as well as some unfortunately some folks that would end up dying of overdoses and stuff. Yeah, so because they were just like street kids. They weren't really like so actually to give you a taste, a more tamed down version is remember when we watched the mid-90s? Mid-90s is inspired. I learned this in hindsight. The mid-90s was inspired by the Kids, yeah. So it's like same kind of themes, except Kids is way more like, damn, this is too real. I'm like, even for me, I'm like, I can see why they got their rating, dude. Anyways, going back to Glengarry Glen Ross. Yeah, I'm curious to like, you've been in the workforce. You've worked for probably many managers. I don't know if you have any that like really like in your mind, like, you could even like not identify, but like, relate to Kevin Spacey. But like in your opinion, like do you think Kevin Spacey was a good manager, a good leader? Because I think that's also something that's in question. So yeah, I think the plot's straightforward. I think here is really a character study. Yeah.
I would say no.
Yeah, that's
the reason I say no is that right. I think he views his employees as pretty worthless, except for like Roma, he produces. But like to a degree, like even the whole structure. I mean, your job as a manager is to try to, at least the good ones, is to try to get the best out of your employees or try to push them in that direction. And the best managers I've had have done that. I never saw anything of Spacey showing any kind of characteristic, trying to push or like try to help bring out the best out of his employees. Like that's my takeaway from it. So no, I don't think he was a good manager at all.
Yeah,
He was just kind of a corporate man doing what the bigwigs said he needed to do.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
honestly, the four were really set up to fail. To be honest.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I the reason I asked this question is because I've also had many bosses, and I think managers either they failed up into it, or they lose sight of what you just said earlier. That like over time they lost sight of, like you said, it's about maximizing the talent you have to get the most productivity. To just basically like, how do I save my own skin, and like how do I move up playing politics and stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what happens to a lot of, and I think it even happens up the chain when like you become whatever, a senior director or BP or whatever, is that you kind of lose sight of that and you start becoming like more desensitized. And I think that's what happened to Kevin Spacey, is that in the end he viewed his employees as like, it's not him that's the problem, it's them, versus saying, being like, my unit is underperforming, this probably reflects badly on me, but he was not I also liked how he always referenced like the corporate office, and like the the big wigs,
Mm-hmm.
and then he and it also like he brings like I don't know if he brought, or it was the corporate office's idea to bring Alec Baldwin's character, but it's like he didn't know his team that well when he knew that, was this really gonna, like, with a certain group of guys, I could see that motivating dudes, but it like alienated everybody.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's like terrible leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and I think like that's why I posed the question, because like I think from different points, this is why I think this movie is still popular and it's a cult classic, is that if you have worked in the white collar managerial America, you kind of like, even though it's sales, and it is, I think that's why sales was used, is because it's always the most egregious and the most like in your face.
Obnoxious, dude.
Yeah. But I think these are dynamics that happen throughout white collar work, pettiness, politics, career advancement. Is it you or the other guy? Where I currently work now, which I can't disclose, a product manager, he has a quote that I think represents the company culture pretty well. It's like, you eat what you can kill.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's basically like, you can, chew down that food and like, you can like keep going, you're going to go far. If you struggle, you'll be cut, it's like, and I think that's the mentality of a lot of, especially in like the era of the 80s, 90s, from what I understand, their books and obviously the movies I've seen. I think we've tried to become more like DEI and stuff like this, but I think, unfortunately, I think that was we're going back to the mean, which is like, where's the output? Where's the performance? You're taking too much vacation, like we're going back to those days, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's a young generation that like, they were trying to do the quiet quitting and stuff. But I tell you this, if you're doing the quiet quitting, as somebody who manages, so my philosophy as somebody who manages people now is that I'm 70% individual contributor and I only do 30% management. And if I got to do beyond that, you're not on my team, much less.
Mm-hmm.
So what I expect from my direct reports is that like, if I ask them to climb Mount Everest without oxygen, they say how and when. I don't want to do it. So
okay.
Another cliche.
Anyway,
I love it.
So,
anyway,
is there any other aspects of this film that you want to talk about?
I guess, yeah. What did you think of when you got to, because they went to somebody's house, remember, to pitch?
Yeah.
There was two guys. Shelley did it, and I think the other guys did it too. I'm curious to like, because I don't think that happens much these days. So I think the last part, I know we're just like all over the place, but this movie is pretty straightforward, and like it's basically a story of like, in my opinion, of like 1990s, 80s, corporate, whatever, corporate setting, and like the tension between the manager and the employees and capitalism in many ways. But I want to pick your brain on some like, maybe like things that we don't see much in our era anymore, because we're in the, let's call it the digital era. Yeah, what'd you think of like guys going door to door? Because I think that was like that was common for like a generation of Americans, you know, like getting your door knocked pretty frequently and like getting like pitched on
Yeah. No,
things.
I mean, I'm sure you've gotten your door knocked by like some Jehovah's Witnesses before.
Yeah, they're the only ones that still do it. Anyways, yeah, they're annoying. But anyways, but yeah, like I'm just curious to like I know sales has and marketing has changed actually probably a lot, and we don't appreciate it enough. But like, you know, do you think like you know that the guy selling you because there is something because we always talked in the past about like you know human interaction matters, you know people are so on the phones, they're dating on the phones. Do you think like sales also has lost something with like more of the targeted ads or has just become more efficient?
I don't. That's hard to say. I think it's probably become more efficient. Because I'll tell you, if someone's trying to come to my door and sell me a blender, I'm not going to hear them.
That's true.
You get what I'm saying? Like I would
Yeah.
be annoyed. The thing with targeted ads is it shows you things that you probably like. Whereas like some, especially, oh my god, I don't know if you remember these days of these multi-level marketing. Like this happened a couple times. This is like in the early 2000s. People trying to sell those Cutco knives.
I remember that. Yeah.
In fact, and I'll tell you off pod, someone we know was selling them for a period. But I'm like, dude, no one cares about knives. Like, and that's the thing. They would go and they like a lot of people would try to present that it's like, oh, I like you got to check out these knives. They're super sharp, the sharpest things. They're like Ginsu knives. It's just like, dude, like, it's a tough gig trying to sell door to door. I don't think most people made a lot of money off of that.
Actually, there's one aspect of the film we should touch upon that's really important. Is that even though Roma were giving him all of his roses, how did you think he handled manipulating that one client that what he was trying to sell?
Well, I mean, sales is a slimy business. So I'm not saying he did the right thing, but it was there's a lot of people that we know who probably would act as, like Roma did.
100%.
But in that way, these characters are very relatable.
Yeah, that's what I do like about this is that I never felt like, you know how like sometimes with these films they're about, it's fictional, right? But it's about like real things that happen in like our society. I never felt that this film was like faking it. Like it was like this is stuff that like for that period I could see how that's how it works. You know.
What do you mean? Even today?
Yeah, I think now it's just the players have changed and like the tooling has changed.
Yeah, but the vibes, the archetypes are still there.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, other than that, like, I mean, I didn't feel sympathy for Shelly. Right? Shelly
Shelly reminded me of what was it? I think the original play drew some influence, but Death of a Salesman.
That's a good play too. Yeah. But yeah, no, acting was great. Again, self-contained story. We're already spoiled, kind of like what happens. Performances were good, and I just think it's just again, it's about you know what we just discussed, like the management, employees, capitalism in America, like of a certain group, right? Because I would say that like capitalism in America for the person who is bussing tables and throwing the trash out is completely different than the sales guy doing real estate, which you know, real estate still in many ways, even though technology has impacted it, it's still very archaic, right? Like you still got to go house viewing, you got to do all this old let's say old workflows and you know, get to buy a property and stuff and you know, maintain it and manage it, and you gotta look at water rights and all these things. So in many ways it's still, you know, old school in some ways, analog as they would say. But obviously now people look at more, they again, technology still impacted like how people look at homes and how efficient, you know, people can look at pricing and stuff. But yeah, it's very interesting to see that, like, you know, how in some ways things haven't changed, even though society has moved a lot. Like I was actually before we, you know, end on ratings and any side topics, I think I was reading like there was a stat that like I think like 1970 to 1990 is closer in distance than today and 1990, which obviously you just do the math, it makes sense. But like that's how time has passed, dude. And like it's crazy. I'm not a young man anymore, dude.
What did I never send you that reel of like someone who's like just going like a millennial going and trying to like sell his like GTA Vice City?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. It was like 05 or something. Yeah,
right? It's like 02 it came out.
02.
Vice City came out in 02. And then he's like, oh, there's like some like
vintage
kids there. It's like, wow, this is so retro. And he's like, actually, it's not retro. It's like it came out when I was in high school. Did you know the time between now and when the game came out is longer than when it came out in the actual setting in '86? And like the guy freaks out.
Because now retro is like, I mean, we grew up retro was like 70s, 80s, but it's true for like a younger generation of kids. Retro
Early
is like
2000s starting to become retro.
is like late 90s, early 2000s is retro. It's like,
Which
oh,
is
that's crazy, dude. That is crazy, dude. But you know, but it makes sense because time passes, and you know, was it Father Time is undefeated, as they say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wild, but yeah, it's like you said, 90s, you know, films are from a different, you know, caliber. And I've actually noticed this with like, because I have a few 90s picks in the back pocket that like it's definitely a different style and pacing. I just think it's actually in that in between period before like there was this explosion of like because now a lot of films, as you know, like it's made with the green screens. And so like this is still a period where it's like we're getting to that transition. It's not there yet. Yeah.
Remember we did the very famous 90s film. This is one of our early picks, but American History X, another 90s film.
Yeah. So they still had a
gritty feel.
Yeah, they still had to like film on location. Now they have to do that. Like they do that, but like the green screens help a lot, you know, with like anything they got to edit in post and stuff. So, but yeah, that's all I got really. We could get into ratings because this film is pretty. I know it's like still meaty, it's lengthwise, but it wasn't like I never felt like like there's so much going on. It's like a pretty linear plot. Like you're following humans.
It was not. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that bad. I guess I can get into final ratings. Thought the acting from Pacino was brilliant. Spacey was okay. He underwhelmed me a little at times. I just don't think he had enough moments really to really shine. He had his with Shelley, but he was just okay.
Yeah, he didn't have the largest part, right? Like this was really
no. Even the Baldwin teaser, I'm like, he had his scene, but it was like 3 minutes, and then you never saw Baldwin again. And I was like, wow, that's shocking.
It's a great scene, though.
It was, but I was expecting him to like make an appearance later on at some point. He never did.
No, he did what he needed to do. He has to go back to living his luxurious lifestyle. Come on,
you know, to accidentally shooting other actors. Sorry, I had to take that shot. I'm trying to think. I thought the flow. I mean, it was pretty straightforward. It did feel like a play. Now that you mentioned it, so that brings my score a little like higher up. I would say the pacing did feel a little slow at times, so I think that was my like one critique of it. Like I did get bored in instances. I did find it funny, like some of the less PC early '90s era where they were talking about the Chinese and like you want to see
the yeah, they're so cheap. They're so cheap. I think they're making a cheap joke in there too.
Yeah,
right?
they're all kinds of jokes because they did all the business at the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
Right, and aspects like that were just funny and like kind of caught me off guard. I'm trying to think, was there anything else? Shelley's performance was good. I just found his character so dang annoying. But yeah, I think we've talked about this a lot. It's sometimes hard watching things in retrospect because you're just so used to like films of your era and how they're in. Like we talked about specifically with Stalker, so that kind of clouds your judgment a little bit. But I have to give this film a 7.5.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think this film is. I think the problem with like films, because we've done a few films, I think they've been like plays and then they've been adapted to.
Which one? Which other ones have we done?
I think was The Whale a play?
No.
Let me check. Let me check.
You like The Whale though?
Yeah, well, those kind of movies.
You hated it, but you liked it. I think
Darren.
What?
Darren. Play of the 2012 play of the same name. No, but Darren. But I think Darren. What's his name? The director Aronofsky is like I could see him doing really well with like that material. Like I feel like a different director would have really like.
Oh, it would have been bad.
I can't do this. You know. I don't know if there's others.
That movie was also cast very well.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head than that one, or there's others we've done that are based off a play. But I think the problem when sometimes we do a film, having been to Broadway myself for like, has been a minute, but I've seen like at least 3 shows, is that plays, it's tough. Like even when they do book to play, it's kind of tricky. Mm-hmm. And then it's the same thing. I think when you cross mediums, it's like if you don't do these creative maybe tweaks and changes, you know, it's just you like you say when you watch it, or when you watch it or read it, like if you go from book to play, like even if you read the play, like it's probably you can notice that like it's a different medium, right? And I think the same thing with here happened with the play to film, is that like I think they wanted to stay truthful. I unfortunately haven't read the play. I usually try to like read both book materials. Like when I eventually pick Oppenheimer, I read the book that it was based on, and I watched the movie, so I'll be able to, you know, contrast it, because, you know, this is me without reading the play, but I get the sense that they wanted to be faithful to the play, and to a degree that's always a safe choice, because then people who love the play won't rip you for it. But when you're so faithful, right, the problem is you feel like you're watching a play that's a movie, when you should just watch an actual play then, right?
Well, that was kind of like my issue with The Martian, as they changed the whole ending up from the book, and that made me very mad.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if they changed as much, as they didn't read the play, but I imagine they did some tweaks because they had to. But like, and they got like the core down to be faithful. But like when you're faithful, like then you're stuck with like, well, then you should just read or watch the play, like, or watch it in a show, right? And I think the acting was so good that I think kind of masked this, and I think it's also because it's a star-studded cast in hindsight. I think Kevin Spacey is still rising in his career at this point in the early 90s, so he's not reached the peak of like, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think that's probably why it also like it's a cult classic, because I do know that this film is one of those that like people do reference, but I've noticed that like it's considered a cult classic. Like it's really a niche that still follow it and reference it. It's not, it's not like because what I've learned through, wow, now we've watched more of this podcast, is that, you know, there are cult classics, like we do many, and then there's like Rocky, which is like, even if you think the film is overrated, it's like it touched America's like, you know, cultural, that's cultural touchstone for America, which maybe eventually we'll pick more of those. I'll pick more of those kind of films, but because like, even if you don't watch the film, like there's just so many references of of Rocky that like it's crazy. And there's a statue of a fictional character in Philadelphia, which is wild. But
which Bill Burr ripped in his epic.
I know, yeah, because they have an actual legendary boxer. That's that's actually Joe Frazier.
And he said that's amazing. How racist that city is, because they don't because he's black.
Well, what's funny is that it says the Bostonian. Anyways,
well, it takes one to know one.
Probably. Anyways, my rating for this film was a pretty solid, like 8 out of 10. What I liked about this film, maybe what I really appreciate and why I picked it, is that obviously that Alec Baldwin scene is like one of my favorite. I can't like, you know, give it something a non-8 when it's like has one of my favorite scenes of cinema history, with the you know, the balls, yeah, with perfect timing too. But I do think this movie suffers from the downsides of when you're based on a book or play, right? Like this happens with The Great Gatsby. This happens with a lot of films. Actually, I bet you the list of films that pull it off, and people were like, you know what, the movies they're a great compliment to the book. The Whale did it. I think the first Lord of the Rings trilogy did a good complimentary to the books.
Fences was like, it was a good performance by Denzel, but it's a play that was not meant to be on a movie.
Which one? Fences.
Yeah.
I tried watching it twice, and each time I was like, something's off, and I never finished it. Yeah.
It's just too. It's meant to, and it's one of my favorite plays. Like I read it when we were in high school, but yeah, when I watched it, I was like, it's meant to be a play. It's not meant to be a movie.
Yeah. I think this film didn't suffer from that, but I think it was closer than we think to it should have just been a play, you know. But
yeah, could have.
But I think the star-studded cast really blew it up, and I think also like really helped it. Like, and actually, I'm trying to remember if I read this correctly. I'll end on this: is that I'm pretty sure that Alec Baldwin's character is actually a film-only character. So one of the good.
Oh, so they didn't have it in the
play. So like they knew, it's that fine line of like they knew when to like kind of like
to put its own
tweak
touch.
it, to put some touch. So I give them credit, but I just think that my sense is that I'd rather read the play. I bet you it's one of more dense type of plays, and it's still tough always to translate those to a film. So
Agreed.
I'll have to say that's probably tough. But yeah, 8 out of 10, solid film. And thank you for listening to our podcast. We're going to have some good ones, I think, coming up. So those are going to be longer discussions. I know you're picking Perfect Blue next, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that, dude.
Well, that was my first time watching it recently. That was a wild movie for the 90s.
Yeah, that's a real. Oh, yeah, that was a good one, dude, with like the stalker and everything. Oh, yeah, dude. And like identity and perception. Oh, so good, dude.
Fame. All
Fame.
of
Yeah, it's all that's gonna be a good conversation. And then I think I'm definitely gonna go with the very controversial,
Kids.
highly respected film that I think made a lot of
Kids, right?
Kids, yeah. I'm gonna go with Kids, yeah. So good luck with that one.
And we have following that. This is another preview. Banshees of Insurance.
That's a good one too.
That'll be an interesting combo as well.
That's a good one. It's about a lot of things, but
yeah, a lot. We'll end on that.
But yeah, we'll end on that. I think, and then my pick after is easy too because I'm not changing my picks. It's Straight Out of Compton. Straight Out of Compton. Let's go.
That's a different kind of conversation.
It's gonna be so good, dude. I love that movie, dude. Oh man,
I've actually never seen it.
I'm actually shocked, dude, because like I saw that and I was like, I respect Ice Cube way more than I did before.
Like, you know what's funny is I had a friend who said the same thing. She was a bit younger than us. This is back when we were in California, and she's like, "Yo, I thought Ice Cube was just kind of corny because I knew him from like Daddy Daycare or all those films." She's like, "I didn't realize he's like,
hard, dude. I like it. That's why I liked it. I was like, I knew the guy was like hard because I knew that he was an NWA, but I was like, let's see in the rise. I was like, you know what? Let's go." This is I respect that, dude. Anyways, but yeah, we'll end on that. Please like and subscribe. Obviously add your comments. We don't get many comments actually. Actually, we get more likes and dislikes. So please like and subscribe. So I'm gonna say like and subscribe more.